Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This morning I'm going to attempt to put together this video of the tour of the WH Nursery. Now this differs from any other video I've done because that event was different from anything else I've ever done. So I'm going to attempt to do it in a different manner. Normally when I'm at a nursery like Burnham's or one of the bigger shows or something like that, you know how I do it. I normally gently go along filming and doing a few close-ups, and then I get rid of the mumbo jumbo soundtrack and put some music on, and that's what you get. Yeah, this one I'm going to do differently, because if I just do that you won't know what you're looking at. It needs explanation, and unfortunately there are some bits missing. That's my fault because I was filming. As I was filming, obviously I didn't want to get the people in, so I lagged behind. So a lot of the time the tour was going on ahead and I couldn't actually hear what was being said. So there are some finer details that I didn't hear, basically. So there'll be a bit of interpretation going on, but basically fundamentally I know how the nursery works. So that's the idea. I shall be using some techniques that I don't normally use, so it's going to take me a while to put it together. This is just in principle, just as a simple explanation. If there's a video clip that's, say, 1 minute and 10 seconds long, and the words that I want to say take 3 minutes, what do? Well, what I do is I get to a point where an explanation is required, and I use the pause freeze frame function, which effectively takes a picture of where I am in the video and just generates a section that is like a photo, like a still. And that can be stretched. That can be made to any length you like, either literally by stretching it or by changing the time on it, basically, so that eventually my 1 minute 10 second video clip ends up the same length as the narration that I put to it. But it's a bit fiddly. So there'll probably be quite a bit of this going on. There might be some language that won't get recorded, you know me. We don't get nasty words on my videos. But we're going to give it a go, and hopefully, it's a bit of fun, and it's something different, and it's something I may never get the chance to do again. Simple as that. I'd love to go to some of the bigger nurseries in the EU, but I can't bring anything home. So, no, I won't be doing that. I could bring the videos home, I suppose, but, a huge amount of expense to do that sort of trip, so it's probably never going to happen. Yes, so we'll give this a go. I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a comment. That's all I can ask with videos like this. As I said, it's a bit of a novelty. There aren't any other videos like this on my channel. Out of the thousands that there are, there's none like this, and there may not be again. And it's going to take a bit of work to put it together. So it'll be nice to get some comments, and don't forget the old thumbs up. So let's give it a go. Hopefully it'll work. Okay, we start our journey with a borrowed picture from their website, which is an aerial shot of the nursery itself. If you look at the very centre, you're looking at those huge container lorries. Those are the containers that go on the back of the lorries, and if you look at how big they look, you can see how big the nursery is overall. Right over on the left hand side you can see the tail end of the car park, which is where we all arrived, and then we strolled round to that little space in the middle where we gathered. And if you look slightly up and to the centre, there's a green roof. That's the way in, basically, and inside that area are the offices, the admin functions and that sort of thing. Just in front of that green roof you can see a lorry facing away from the building. Behind that lorry is a pit. There's a long slope that goes down to an opening. That opening is exactly the size of the back of the lorry. The lorry backs up to the floor in that loading area. and the trolleys full of orchids get wheeled straight onto the lorry, locked into position, and the lorry drives away. It's not an automated function, but not far off it. Yes, so the lorry, watching the lorry drivers back in there, it's an art form. It's a narrow slope that goes downhill steeply. So if you think of how an Arctic works, the trailer is heading downhill in a narrow environment up to a building. The cab with the lorry and the mirrors is still on the flat ground at the full height. These lorry drivers are pretty good stuff. Anyway, so that's an overview of the look of the place. Obviously that is a lot of glass houses, yeah. So and some of them are open when you get in there. You know, the whole area is just one greenhouse. It might look like lots of different ones, but not necessarily. So the company started quite a long time ago, and it started growing foliage plants. They eventually started going out of favour, so they weren't as popular. So they needed to think of something else. And with the development of the mericloning process and the speed at which Phalaenopsis orchids can be grown on and got to flower, they decided to go down that road. Now, the orchids are not grown here from scratch. There's no hybridization goes on here. They buy in plug plants with 2 leaves in the little plug that you've seen on my repotting videos, where I've repotted some of the mini phals that I bought from here. So it's a little coir based plug that they arrive in. So with trips to places like Germany and the Netherlands and having a look at the mass producers over there at what they've got on offer, and planning ahead for the sort of colours that they would like to produce here, they order in thousands of plug plants, which are then produced by the mass producers and brought over here as plug plants in the thousands, basically. So that's where the sort of process starts. And let's move on inside now and see where we are. Right, so this is the first area we visited, and this basically is geared up to arrivals. So this is the lorries unloaded into this area, and basically the plug plants are either put in 12 centimetre pots or 9 centimetre pots. That's the start of the process. This is the growing area. So this is where these plug plants are grown on up to the point where they're large enough to induce the blooming. The temperature in here is constant at 28 degrees centigrade. So after about 10 seconds in this environment, off came the jackets and the jumpers and the woolies because it was chilly outside. So now everybody's got something draped over their arm. It was warm. Humidity is not ridiculously high. It's around 60%, and that's achieved by misting, basically. You can see the fans hanging down from the ceiling. They're constantly on, so there's constant air circulation. And the lighting system in this area is the old-fashioned sodium lights, which in some cases they're replacing with LEDs because they're much, much cheaper to run. But there is a downside with LEDs. They don't produce heat. They're cold running lights. These old sodium lights give off a lot of heat. So it makes sense in the growing area to offset the cost of running these, which is relatively high, with the fact that they actually produce some of the heat, which is good stuff, you know, in this grow room, in this growing on area. Now, their heat source is a biomass boiler system. So basically they burn mashed up wood. So they get wood from recycling centres, they get wood from disused pallets and things like that. So it's basically any wood that will burn that can be effectively gifted or bought at a ridiculously cheap cost, and it's mashed up into pieces, and then that arrives by the lorry load, and goes into a huge storage area, and that has an automated function. So there's conveyor belts that take the wood along and load it into the furnace, and then there's an automated system to get rid of the ash and things like that. So it's a very green process as a heating source. I believe they might even get a grant from the government as a consequence, as an industrial unit, you know, producing a relatively green source of heat. So that's how they heat the place. As I said, this area is 28 degrees, and they stay in here until they've reached the size where they are guaranteed to bloom. But they have to change the environment to actually get them to bloom. Now on the right hand side of this shot, you can see there's a lot of plants there covered in fleece. They haven't been uncovered yet. That's how they arrived. And the guy looked at that and he said, oh, they should have done that by now. But yeah, so that's the process going on in here. It's an automated watering system, automated misting system, and the lights are controlled automatically by computer with light sensors. So if the sun comes out and starts producing some natural light in through the roof, the lights will probably go off, and then they come back on if the light level drops again. I didn't hear the length of time, but I'm reasonably certain that daylight hours are 14 daylight hours for growing. But as I said, I missed that bit of the talk because I was, well, in fact, I was actually talking to somebody else at the time, well away from the guy doing the tour, obviously. Right, so from there, we move on. So this area is where they induce the blooming, and this is a very simple process. It's called moving them out of the growing area at 28 degrees C into an area that's maintained at 20 degrees C, and it is as simple as that. The humidity rate remains around the same, 60-ish%, and this is one of the areas where they've switched to LED lights. You can see the automated watering system. It's literally just here at the top of the shot, and the watering system moves. The plants stay where they are. The watering system is on runners and goes over the plants. The trays, if you look at the size of the trays that they're in, and then if you look, there are runners along here. We were stood the other side of the runners. So basically these trays will slide off onto those runners and can then be pushed anywhere in the facility. So you can move an awful lot of plants all at once incredibly quickly. That's not an automated function. Somebody with one finger pushes them along. Literally, there's, because they're on runners, they just move incredibly easy. So they can be brought out, and they're all ordered in sequence, so that the ones nearest the runners are the ones that are going to be moved first, and the ones farthest away from the runners are the ones that haven't long been in there and haven't got their spikes yet. Yeah, so there is a process where the pots are topped up and staked in whatever form they're going to take. I couldn't film in that area because it's a working nursery. The people were actually working in that area, so I'd have had to film the people, which I said I wouldn't do. So anyway, so as I said, drop of temperature here, so the cost of running this section is a lot lower than the growing section because it's it's a cooler section. It's got LED lights which are a lot cheaper to run, although they start off by being quite expensive to buy. I think he said they just spent something like £38,000 on introducing LED lights into this area. But as I said, I was quite a distance away from the guy doing the talk. Yeah, so that's what happens next, and then moving on. Right, this is a look at a display stand of some of the finished products. So this is what they sell basically. It's all Phalaenopsis. There's mini phals and the full-size phals. Say mini phals go in the 9 centimetre pots. The full-size plants go in the 12 centimetre pots. Some are produced as gifts with hoops. A lot are sold in decorative pots as gifts. The online presence for this nursery, because this is wholesale, this nursery, so you can't walk in and buy stuff. But they do have an online presence which is called Love Orchids. I've talked about that before and have used that before. And they offer discounts, but we'll have a chat about that when we get to looking at the actual plants. This is just a sample of what they produce, a display area. Right, now we're moving on to effectively where some of the finished products are. These are the mini phals. Again, they're still in these really large trays which can be dragged out and wheeled around. At this point they would be graded. They have grade A plants, which is basically for their customers. Yeah, as I said, they are wholesale. One of their main customers is Morrison's, the supermarket in the UK, and some other quite large customers as well. And basically they have grade A plants which are as near perfect as they can get for the type. So the mini phals would have 2 spikes. They'd have at least 4 full-size leaves. They'd be clean looking. They'd have a good root system. The spikes would be virtually of equal size. The blooms would be opened evenly along those 2 spikes. There may still be some buds to open, but they would be a balanced, even plant. With the blooms mainly facing in one direction. Not always, but mainly. So that would be a grade A. Anything that's not quite right with the plant, it automatically goes to a grade B, which they can't sell to their main customers. So a lot of those get sold on the online. Now when I say grade B, that might mean that one of the spikes is not quite as big as the other one. That's not exactly a big deal, is it? Or one of the spikes might have more open flowers than the other one. Yeah, these are not far off, you know, their perfection that they like to put out to their main customers. They're still incredibly good plants. So you've got grade A, then you've got grade B, then you've got compost. Because anything less than that they won't sell. They want to keep their reputation for product. So anything that's less than grade B, there isn't a grade C, there's a bin instead. So that's how they work. And yeah, looking round, there is a place where these huge trays, the plants are placed in the holders on those big trays. That's done by humans, and there's a reason for it. Because they adjust the leaves so that the plants haven't got crossing over leaves. Because if leaves cross over, one of those plants is not going to get as much water, because it'll run off the leaves. So they try and arrange the plants so that they get an equal amount of water and feed if necessary. I asked about feeding. The growing area, so the 28-degree section, that's I didn't ask for quantities and types of feed or anything like that, but they feed with quite a high nitrogen feed in that area to grow the plants on. When they move to the cool area to induce the spikes, they then use a low nitrogen feed. Yeah, so what we might endearingly call a bloom booster, but you know, it's just basically a different balance, and cut the nitrogen right down because it's not required at that stage. So and in the growing area they feed 4 times and then have a clean flush through. They use rainwater that they collect on the roofs, so it's all their own water. Yeah, a good system. So that's the mini phals, and up the back you can see the bigger ones, but I did actually move around to that area, and let's move on to the next one and have a look at some of the bigger ones. Okay, so these are some of the 12 centimetre pots, Phalaenopsis. One thing I learnt that I didn't know, and in their experience, white Phalaenopsis orchids are a lot easier to bring into bloom and a lot easier to actually get to rebloom than their purple counterparts. So purple ones are more difficult to get to rebloom, and they are more likely to only produce one spike rather than two. Yeah, so and yet there's a sea of purple in the background. But yes, I didn't know that. It's just a trait from the species that these are all derived from. That white are just easier to rebloom and easier to produce multiple spikes. So there we go. Right, that's most of the tour. We were then herded. It's like herding cats, trying to get some people to actually move away from the plants. We were allowed loose in this area to choose our plants. And he said, this area here, these are B grade plants, so you can have them for a couple of quid. These over here are A grade plants, so the smaller ones are, I think he said, 3 quid, and the larger phals of the A grade were a fiver. So we were getting them at discounted prices, even some of the A grade plants. So we did well, and quite a few people bought quite a few plants. But the fact that they don't do retail, I think they were classed as donations, because obviously they're not going through the system. I mean, their plants are sold by the lorry load. Hundreds and thousands are going out the door on a regular basis to supply all around the country and everything. Only this country, they don't supply abroad. The paperwork and expense is too great, and they'd be in competition with the mass producers on the EU, which they can't do. So all they can do is produce stuff here, having imported the original 2-leafed plug plants. So as I said, we were let loose here. Then we were herded into what effectively is the workers' canteen, but it was a bit posh for a canteen. Call it a rest area, I suppose you could call it, where we had tea and coffee and a chat. And we showed the plants that we'd brought, and he gave us a receipt and took the money. So that was the sort of end of the tour. Then we all wandered off a little bit. Some people still had their mouths open, I think. Anyway, before we disappear, when we were being herded out the door, I took a little bit of a detour because, as I said, I have been there before. So let's move on to that clip and see why. Right, this is the packing and loading area and storage area for some of the things they need to do that packing and loading. So some of the decorative pots. You can see the trolleys there. That's how the trolleys are loaded up to go on the lorries to go to the supermarkets. Some of the crates that they use for other things. This was a working area, so strictly speaking I shouldn't have been in there because there's moving things, vehicles and things and stuff, so supposed to be staff only, but I had a quick sneaky look round, shall we say, and it's just to give you an idea of the sort of scale. If you think about how many orchids there might be on one of those trolleys, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers, maybe 9 if I can't count properly, and each layer is absolutely jam-packed, and they're just wheeled straight onto the lorries in that loading bay. So this is the end of the process, and it's the process that does require humans. This is where the admin's done, where the orders arrive, people organise the orders onto the trolleys. and sign off that the load is complete and everything. Paperwork for the driver, and away they go. Never to be seen again. Followed by the next lot, and the next lot, and the next lot. And so it goes on 7 days a week. It's a busy place. So there you go. Right, I thought I'd end on just looking at the plant I actually bought at the end of the tour on Saturday. It's the only plant I had in mind to buy. I've looked online and I bought some, as like I've said, I bought 8 of the mini phals anyway. And I was after a large white. Now I was expecting, I meant blooms, large white blooms. It's something I haven't got that I wanted. And I was absolutely super pleased when I found out that the large white that I picked up was actually a mini plant in a 9 centimetre pot instead of the 12 centimetre much larger plants. So I've got the blooms I wanted without the plant taking up all my space on my shelf. So there we go. That's what I came away with. Well pleased with that. And yeah, a wonderful place to visit. May never happen again. So I was privileged to get the tour. As I said, I've been there many times before. When I worked for the car rental company, I used to deliver cars and collect them. So I've had a bit of a wander before, but not the proper tour. And then I lagged behind filming for you good people and didn't hear quite a bit of it. But I asked if we could go again, and he said, well, it might be something you want to do perhaps every 2 years rather than every year, because he said we don't normally do these sort of tours. It's something was started by Bournemouth Orchid Society as a request, and it was put together, and Wessex have now had one. I think Bournemouth have had a couple. So he said, you are welcome back, but it's not the sort of thing we would do frequently. So I may end up going again one day, but in at least a year's time, maybe 2. We shall see. And I hope you enjoyed that. A look round a production system, a bit different to anything else in this country, but well worth doing. And yeah, don't forget, do your old thumbs up and leave a comment, see what you thought of the place. And as I said, it's not a place you can visit. You can buy their orchids online from the website, which is Love Orchids, and you can have a look at their website HH at some of the shots and some words about the history of the place and all things like that, if you wish to go and have a look at that. I'll put the links to both of those, the website for the actual HH Nursery and the website for the online purchases. I'll put the links in the description, so you can just click on those if you wish to have a look round. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.